I'm still ruminating on the footage I saw earlier, as I ride Victor's shoulder through the halls of Citadel's ODR. I find myself wondering what Requal would do if we discovered a band of hundreds of hermit Requali who had been living in isolation, outside the clan law, since before it was even established, the way we lived 2 million years ago. I don't know what we would do, but I can confidently say that no matter how clear they made it that it was what they wanted, leaving them to their own devices would not be considered, much less establishing an entire agency to make sure they were left to their own devices. I'm not sure what the crueler approach would be, dragging those humans, kicking and screaming, into Terra's 28th century, or letting them be. On the one claw, one must assume that their isolationism is based on faulty assumptions about what modern society looks like, and how it operates, and surely they will be glad to be part of it, if they knew the truth. On the other hand, that would involve taking the choice away from them, which may make them so resentful that they will be incapable of appreciating the benefits. I suppose it's somewhat the same as the few hundred planets, like Toon's Cradle, that refuse membership in the Galactic Union. I think it's a mistake, but I would never advocate for invading them to force them to join. If there were a parliamentary debate about that issue, I would enthusiastically throw my support behind the non-interventionalists.
Ah, Mistress Miyazaki, and the crew of the Bright Plume, I assume, interjects one of a slightly nervous-looking pair of employees, who have just appeared ahead of us. You're a little early.
Yes, well, smiles Emiko. It seems that between myself and these two here, she gestures at me and Victor, we managed to do a little too good of a job impressing on everyone the need for punctuality. We found ourselves all gathered in the shuttle bay with time to spare, so decided to set off a little early.
Well, most of your new crew members haven't arrived yet. Mr. Buck and I were just on our way to fetch the oceanographer. Would you like one of us to lead you to the gymnasium?
Actually, Mr. She leans to check his name tag. Kasongo, I was wondering if I might have a little talk with Mirala first. I was prevented from talking to her at the embassy the other day.
That's fine, mistress, but...
Kasongo looks at the crowd behind us.
I don't know if it's advisable for such a large crowd to go into that room. Would it be acceptable if I lead everyone else straight to the gym and let my colleague take you to the aquarium?
My bodyguard will have to come, she says with effortless charm, and these two as well. She indicates me and Victor.
That's fine, nods Kasongo. There's space for the 4 of you.
With that, he takes the lead of the rest of the group, and Victor, Emiko, Miss Hunter, and I are led away by Mr. Buck. We descend a set of stairs to a subterranean floor that will certainly be below the water level of the canal outside the entrance. I presume the Oscillor woman must have come in through an aquatic entrance that runs under the street outside. We come into a room, at the far side of which is a plexiglass wall holding back crystal clear water. If that plexiglass were to suddenly vanish, even the Terrans would be killed by the force of the liquid impacting them. Inside the tank floats a human wearing a breathing mask and diving suit, and holding a large collar in her hand. To our left, there is a chamber containing a 1.7 meter tall egg-shaped object with a flattened bottom and a top that has been sliced off at an angle. Then, she emerges. Over 3 meters tall from tail tip to the front of her nose, swimming forward, horizontally, her skin is light blue, except for the bulbous fingertips of her 2 4-digit hands. Her patches of smoky, periocular skin and her belly skin so pale, it's almost white. Her back is lined with spines and she wears no clothing. She has no legs and, where they would be on a human, instead has a large, muscular tail, ending in a horizontal fluke like a Terran cetacean. The places on her head where a human would have ears bear instead hydrodynamic fins. Her eyes are a piercing blue colour with W-shaped pupils, and her neck sports 8 long slits, 4 on each side. She orients herself vertically in the water column, looking down at the Terran in the tank with her. The two greet each other by swiveling their respective forearms in mirrored 90-degree arcs in front of their chests, after which they have a brief exchange of signs, though not using any grammar I recognize from galactic-based sign language. The Terran woman hands the Ossior the collar, which, after a brief moment's hesitation, she affixes around her neck over her gills. The attendant Terran then gestures to the chamber, with the enormous bisected egg in it, and the larger woman drifts over to it. Somewhat awkwardly, she slides the fluke of her tail into the opening at the top, and then fans her arms upward to slide the rest of her body into the device, up to her waist. Experimentally, she directs it up, down, backward, forward, left and right, before signaling a presumable OK to the woman behind her. The attendant seals the far door, isolating the woman in the chamber. She looks slightly nervous as the water level drops from the ceiling, lower and lower, until her head breaches its surface. She does not immediately begin to suffocate. The aqua respirator collar seems to be functioning as intended. The egg-shaped object she's currently inside of does not begin to sink when it looks like it should. In fact, the water level manages to reach all the way to its base, and then keep going without its position in space changing at all. Her hover chair is also functioning as intended. The airlock now completely empty, the near side door opens. Mr. Buck steps forward, performing the same arm swivel as the woman in the tank did, before switching to his own sound medium language to say, "Welcome to the Citadel ODR, Miss Morala. It's a pleasure to have you here." Her facial expression is unreadable as she signs in the direction of the group. Having no vocal cords, there is no voice onto which her translated meaning can be layered. However, the metatextual information provided along with her translation informs me of what I already knew. She is a well-spoken young woman with, by my species standards, a decidedly masculine softness to her mode of speech. "I am pleased to be given this opportunity." She turns to Emiko. "You are the one I was to meet the other day?" Stepping forward with a remorseful grimace, Emiko answers, "Yes, my sincere apologies for failing to attend. Circumstances conspired against us." Her tone is flagged as mirthful, as the aquatic woman signs, "Circumstances conspired against you is a way that only a Terran would describe an assassination attempt." There is a general chuckle at that. "So, Miss Morala, there's a lot to discuss, disclaim, and otherwise brief you on. Most of it will be stuff you can hear about at the security briefing we're all about to receive. But I just thought I would allow Taqual here to have a brief chat with you about the accommodations we made for you on the ship, if that's all right." "Of course," responds the soft-spoken woman, politely turning her attention to me. Despite her large size, the height she loses from her lower body being folded inside her hover chair means that I'm talking down to her from my perch atop Victor's shoulder. I consider hopping down to ground level out of respect, but that might make talking even more difficult given the obstacle to eye contact presented by her mobility device. I decide to stay where I am and address her from Victor's shoulder. Extending my wings and dipping my head in a respectful greeting, I address the woman. "It shall be my pleasure to accommodate you aboard my ship, Miss Morala. However, I'm sure you are already aware that it is a vessel primarily designed for terrestrial vertebrates, who breathe an oxygenated, gaseous atmosphere. As such, the accommodations for aquatic species are not as comprehensive as they could be." Her tone is flagged as warm and understanding as she signs,
Nothing I'm not used to, Captain. Though I understand my quarters will be water-filled at least.
Indeed. We already have 2 Rethage crew members who require HAB tanks, so it was a relatively simple matter for my maintenance officer to convert one of the rooms to be watertight for you, and my chief custodial officer to rig you up a water purification and oxygenation system. Unfortunately, regulations wouldn't have allowed for the airlock to have protruded into the hallway, so that means your quarters will have slightly less living space than most, I say ruefully.
The last air-breathing ship I was on expected me to wear one of these the entire journey, she says, tapping her respirator collar. Even constantly moisturizing my skin, I had a bad case of xeroderma by the end of that trip. This arrangement is a marked improvement over that one.
That sounds awful. My engineering lead has explained to me what happens to her skin if she fails to apply her water retention gel to an area of it when moving through air for any significant period. It certainly doesn't sound like something I would like to force you to tolerate. If you experience any issues at all with the hygiene or water quality in your quarters, please do not hesitate to bring it up either to myself or Chief Custodial Officer Glark. If you notice any structural issues, then either myself or Maintenance Officer Bam are the ones you need to talk to.
Her sharp-featured face takes on a warm expression as she signs, "I certainly will, Captain. Thank you." "All right then, shall we make our way to the gymnasium?" smiles Emiko.
There is a general chorus of agreement, as the 6 of us present turn to make our way back up the stairs. Miss Morales' hoverchair is buffeted a little, as each step causes it to jump 20 centimeters or so higher in the air, in a way that looks moderately uncomfortable.
"You might be able to change the settings on that," opines Victor. "There'll be one called something like gradients that you can play around with and see if it will make stair climbing any smoother."
"I'm sure she has used one before, Victor,"
says Emiko with a wiry smirk.
"Yeah, okay, sorry. Just, in my line of work, I'd rather give an unnecessary piece of advice than not give one that might have been useful," answers the man, throwing up his hands in concession.
"Thank you for the advice,"
sighs the aquatic woman, tactfully not clarifying whether it was necessary. With Mr. Buck leading the way, we navigate the ground floor halls, and eventually find our way to a set of open doors into a spacious room. I see the group that was led here by the other attendant, Kasongo. I see a few of the new additions to the ODR contingent aboard. I see some ODR employees. I see no sign of the individual who made it necessary to hold this briefing in such a spacious, high-ceilinged area. Mr. Barker is the first one past the threshold, and starts in surprise, as his head whips up at a 45-degree angle to his left. Forewarned by the man's reaction, Emiko exhibits no surprise, as she follows his gaze, and warmly greets,
"Ah, Mr. Uru, I'm very glad to see that you made it."